Ep3.
Hello and welcome to Slash Dupe, the only movie pitching podcast where 4 very different ideas can come from one title. Everybody's been given the same title, some time to prepare, and comes to our table. Some people have prepared, and comes to our table with a personal film or TV pitch of their own. But not all ideas are created or workshopped equally, and when we're finished, only one will emerge victorious, and there's more on that later on. I think it is important to note that nobody has corroborated beforehand, and we're going into this equally fresh.
So, Sean, what is a slash dupe?
Well, I'm glad you asked. A slash dupe... yeah, we didn't practice that at all. Thanks, Becki. A slash dupe is film industry terminology for a rough, usually monochromatic work print of a film used in the post-production stages for purposes such as scoring or dubbing, and it's more prevalent certainly during the days of physical film. A slash dupe is, in effect, a mere unfinished representation of a finished film, and I think that's what we're hoping to bring to you today, at least.
Certainly.
At least one of those. So we're going to meet our 3 guests. Now, 2 of our guests have been given the title beforehand. One of our guests has not. That guest is the dupe. And that person's hearing the title for the first time, just as you guys are at home. But I think it's worth meeting Dan first, our regular host and guest so far, and
Hello.
to hear how much more prepared you are than you were last episode.
I am more prepared than the second episode,
Right.
and less prepared than the first.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. I think that will strike a nice balance.
A nice balance.
And do you have any expectations of the title? If you
I absolutely do.
you do,
Yeah.
you have high expectations.
High
for the
expectations
title.
of this title.
Well,
yeah.
I just want to say, just before I introduce Becki, our second guest, I just want to say that this is one of the titles that I came up with a long time ago as a joke when the format of this podcast was being bandied about with friends, and we were just laughing about what titles that Hollywood or Netflix would actually make into a film or a TV show, and then would populate it with all these silly, cast and writers and just sort of the ludicrousness of what they would create. But this title was one that came fully formed with the idea and the title as one. So I've had this in my back pocket, and when you hear my pitch, you'll know that it's offensively bad. I mean, it's just terrible.
Is it as bad as Velocipasta?
It's not as bad as Velocipasta.
Because that is brilliant.
Out on Amazon Prime now. 2.5 stars. No, but it's the idea that I have for this title is it's terrible, but I can only see the idea I've come up with. I've had it in my pocket for years, knowing that it would never make a real film is why I brought the title out now. So I am genuinely excited to find out what other people have to bring to this. So with that, I will say, Becki, how do you feel? Without giving the title away to our dupe, how do you feel about the title today and the podcast?
So I was very excited about the title, and if I'm honest, I do think that one of the ideas I've come up with for today is something I would genuinely love to film if anyone was stupid enough to give me the budget. So, maybe, who knows, this could be the first step on a really badly advised journey.
So you're not just pitching it to us to eventually be put into the semi-finals, into the winners' pool, and get made into an amazing trailer.
Which is a big enough accolade.
Which is a fine accolade. But you're actually pitching this to any... And all movie executives that we know are listening to this podcast
of course, all
as
the time.
well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If they feel like they would watch it, I am happy to make it.
Right, okay, so now's a good time to reveal our dupe, Ryan. What do you have to say? You haven't heard the title yet, but how are you feeling?
I have had my creative juice this morning, so I think I'm definitely ready to...
Heroin.
it's a bit close. Bit close to both.
What's your creative
Orange
juice?
Orange juice.
Orange juice.
You know?
Okay.
Take that
So I've had
explicitly.
I've had my creative juice this morning, and I'm ready to sort of, come up with a good title and a wacky pitch, depending on what the title of this film is.
Okay, good. I will reveal the title to you.
Thank you very much.
And
Drum roll.
the title for this week's episode is "This Train Terminates." So the title is "This Train Terminates," and it's. I don't want to put any ideas in your heads. I wanted to talk about it, but I want to just see what that gives you as inspiration. And of course, just for anyone at home or anyone who's thinking of coming on the podcast, it can be any spelling variation. It can be with hyphens. You can even change some of it around if you have a good justification for it. So I think, who's ready to start?
I mean, if you want half an idea...
Perfect.
Before we get Becky's main course.
2.5 ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to hear your pitch.
Would you?
Yeah.
So would I. So here it is. It is a location-specific shoot. It's a Danny Boyle movie, and it is based on the London Tube lines. It will follow the kind of story of 3 or 4 couples of people who meet randomly on various tube lines. So there'll be 4 different. I think there's gonna be 4 different stories.
Okay.
I thought of one, and we're all gonna come up with the other 3.
Perfect.
And it's a non-linear movie, and each section is introduced by the tube stop that they're gonna get on,
Great.
and
Okay.
then it's about these people's journeys as they travel together before they get off at their respective stops.
Okay.
And they will build up over time.
Does it have? Does the movie have chapter headings that are named?
Yeah,
Baker Street.
Baker Street, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And then some of those people will get on the same line. So it'll be like Jubilee Line Stratford, and then it will also later on be Jubilee Line
Okay.
Willesden Green, is that on there?
Yeah.
Well done, Dan. And it will explore these sort of strangers, mostly sort of interaction over time.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got this sort of old school sort of one of them could be like a Strangers on a Train sort of reimagining of this classic love story.
Yeah.
You know, but in this modern time. Also, what I find interesting is the tube is the only space of time until TfL bring it in, but it could be a slight period piece. The tube is the only period of time where you don't have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So it forces people to
Interact.
or to retreat into something else that is more interesting for a film, like reading a book that can spark something. It's more interesting and cinematic than a phone, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I quite like that.
It originally spired off as sort of a first thing, which was like a younger girl and an older man. Of course, you know, that old dynamic. But that this gentleman is on the train and he's always there whenever she gets on. And she never sees him get on and she never sees him get off. And over time they spark up a sort of a relationship. I was thinking kind of Lost in Translation style, do you know what I mean? Where we discover a little bit more about his history as time goes by and it influences her life. And then one day she sees him get off and the next day he never gets back on.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be at least one of the lines.
How will that resolve? Is that partway through her storyline?
No, that will be the end of her storyline.
Oh wow,
I
so it's
think.
quite bittersweet.
Yeah,
and
like
okay.
and she never really finds out why he's gone, but there's a lot of talk before. Could be illness, could be.
Sort of like the way that that Crash has different groups of people that have similar stories that sort of all interconnect with each other.
Yeah, and where some of those lines intersect, we can see some of the stories
like the actual
happening,
tube maps.
but actually seeing them happen twice, but from different perspectives.
Yeah, sure.
So hence the non-linear bit of it, because you want to actually see the interaction from the other eyes.
That's
I
right.
like
Yeah,
that.
and I definitely don't want. I do want to see. Like 3 weeks later, definitely before we see some of the exposition of that, because it will explain some of the. It's nice to keep that mystery. I think the idea of this is the transient nature of the tube and the relationships that one can have. Sorry, go on.
I really like that because I've got a friend who takes a train in every morning and he like religiously sits in the same seat
Yeah,
every
that's good.
time.
That has to be one of those
and
storylines.
he'd come in and he'd say like, oh, you know that girl was sitting there again. And there's a girl that same thing. She gets on the same station as him and sits in her own sort of seat. You know, wherever near to him. So I like that is it's an actual relatable thing that people do.
Yeah, I actually saw that develop.
Did you?
In when I used to commute into town from Shenfield, I actually saw a relationship develop on the train.
That's
with these two people.
Amazing.
Like and it eventually became like a little smile, and then it was like a good morning, and then they were chatting, and then the next time they were sat next to each other rather than opposite each
One
other.
can only imagine like where it goes to.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the other thing you could do if you're using different tube lines is you can also give some of the character of what the different tube lines have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because so like the history of the tube is really bizarre and interesting because a lot of it's all built at different times. It's got different like flavour to it that you can bring into the characters. So I think it's the Northern Line that's got like a really weirdly ghoulish history where like it takes a little detour at one point to go around a plague pit.
Brilliant.
And there's like a disused station where if you look out at the right time between, I think it's near Angel, where you can see basically like great big holes in the wall where the old tunnels went up to the
Is that the one that's used in one of the Bond
Like-
films? They've got
Some of the disused areas. Yeah.
So yeah, there's kind of things where then maybe if you wanted to do like some darker storylines on the Northern Line, but then maybe do something a bit brighter and happier on the ones that actually come up
Yeah,
into the
sure.
underground.
absolutely,
And like,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's a great idea. And the history, you're right, it has a rich history, and each station has a history behind why it's named. And there's sort of, so you can have, I mean, Danny Boyle would imbue the spirit
Absolutely.
of London into these stations.
And it feels like it is for him trying to recreate those 2012 feels.
I see.
So now that we've lost
Interesting.
our way a little, maybe, and it will allow us to address some of the political things going on at the moment. Of course, that will, and tubes still have slightly scary resonance for a lot of people after 7/7 and stuff like that. So it's kind of Danny Boyle's attempt to bring London and England by its sort of proximity
That's great.
back together.
By the thing that everyone within reason has to do is commute. It sort
At
of
least
has that, or travel
London
to somewhere
basic,
else.
yeah.
You have this sort of so just to clarify, I personally like the idea. It feels like this is something he would make now.
It is definitely now.
And you're right about how he's trying to capture the sort of the sort of energy and the love we all had during the Olympics.
Yeah.
He's making a film to
And that
recapture
unity, like whatever people's feelings now, at 2012 we were all proud to be British and everything that came out of that. And so I think he's trying to recapitulate that side.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, Ryan, you had a point to make.
I did, yeah. Well, it was sort of leading on to, it's a bit of London inside joke trivia for you, but would you make whoever is the Jubilee line and the Central line the two hottest looking people, because they're technically the two hottest lines on the
It
Underground?
has to be done.
I'm sure that would go in.
It has to be done, doesn't it? Definitely.
Little bit of London trivia for you?
Yeah. I feel like I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, because you know when you see a name but you never really sort of take it into the. But I think it's Frank Cottrell Boyce. I think he wrote. I'm going to say I think he wrote Millions,
Right.
and I think he's written a couple of Danny Boyle's films, and he's written a lot of Michael Winterbottom films.
Right.
So I feel like he's the writer
the
to
one
imbue it. If we were going to assign a writer to it, he's the sort of guy who can be commercial, but then also sort of lay that sort of something a little different.
It kind of feels indie in its
Yeah.
execution.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with Danny Boyle behind it, it certainly wouldn't be budget wise.
Yes,
If,
exactly. And the support of London City and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. with Danny
absolutely.
Boyle.
It was Frank Cottrell Boyce.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to know I was pronouncing it correctly. So I've just got a question about this structure. So will you take place? So is it outside onto the platforms and then outside into London as well, or is it just,
Only
where's
ever
it-
the tube. And so it can only be those confined spaces.
Yeah.
Which will also give us, each tube has a slightly different configuration anyway, doesn't it, within its
Definitely.
sort of carriages.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's only ever there, and maybe one of them will see someone miss the tube, the doors shutting on them, and we might see that a reoccurring thing.
But maybe that's the opening scene, and these are the characters that you think you're going to see in the film, but they miss the train, and then you sort of pan over and it's two
into
other
the carriage.
characters that you,
Yeah.
You know, it's just as the idea that, you know, this is just a different story for them. Now you're not part, their story's not part of your story.
Yeah.
They've missed the train, they're part of somebody else's story. Something like that.
And I think the opening credits would definitely be just going through tube tunnels, wouldn't it? It would just be
Yeah.
while all the credits
I
are.
like that. It's got a bit of a Linklater feel. I went to the Prince Charles recently for Valentine's Day and watched the trilogy, the before trilogy, before Sunrise, Sunset, and Midnight. So I like that sort of, you know, just coasting from the front view of each train
Yeah.
going through the tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And maybe some of the machinations of it. So, you know, maybe you see just the people that work behind the scenes to make the trains run smoothly. So that you see the driver operating the train
Yeah.
in a way that you've never seen because you're never privy to that. You know, maybe you see someone cleaning and you see someone on the ticket barrier just chatting to someone. I mean, I see people. Where I commute from Nord Junction. There's somebody that says hello to everybody on their way up the track. You know, in the morning, and he says hello to. You know, he's got the jacket on. He works there. It's 6:10 in the morning, but he says hello to everyone on the platform. And I'm like, these are the people that, you know, really make our rail network. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's slow, and yeah, there are delays. But these are very often not down to the people that are actually working their day in and day out doing the jobs that we do as well, working day in and day out. So I sort of like that as an
I like that.
opening.
So
Does that make sense?
There's a real lovely story I read recently about the embankment, the Mind the Gap.
Right.
Voiceover was this one guy for years and years and years, and then they changed it. They went all digital, and the wife of the guy who he had died, she used to go to embankment to go and hear his voice, and she got really sad that she couldn't hear it anymore. But she tweet or someone else tweeted about it,
I think someone else had shared it originally
Yeah.
because I remember reading about it, and it's such a human story.
Yeah.
And like now it's just such a nice moment to be able to be in that place and feel like you're just feeling just a tiny little bit of what she must have
someone's
been feeling
feeling. Yeah.
when someone went then out of their way to restore that for her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is such a nice thing. And I think that's where it reminds you that actually it's human beings who are operating this network. And it's so easy to complain and to moan when things are late or it's not running how you want it. But actually it's people that keep it moving.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's it. The people that keep it moving might be their tagline or something. Which it's about.
Yeah.
It's about the people, so that it becomes. We see them getting annoyed with the function of the tube, but it's really about the people that we see. And
Yeah, and in fact, in essence, like with everything, it's that you really can see them being annoyed with the things that we see them go through in their stories, and sometimes they take it out a little bit just in the way that they speak and things they do into the staff and the train system. But really, they're annoyed at their life. They're annoyed at something that's happened, and sort of another stimulus.
And there's which line is it that's got the horrifically loud squeaky brakes and
Central lines.
Central. So we'll have that.
And the Jubilee. The two hot ones.
The two hot ones.
Hot and squeaky.
That was my name in high school. But really, it's about that. Like maybe someone on one of those lines has a feeling that they can't be heard, and that these breaks always come across their conversation. And
That's their
like
emotional arc, is that they in themselves they feel like they're not heard.
Yeah.
I love it. So I sort of I think nailing down some of the arcs that we get would be good. I really like the idea of, and I don't know if this is possible, but I think if anyone can do it, it's Danny Boyle. I like the idea of having relationships between two people, like you said, inspired by what you witnessed, but they never speak to each other in words. So you can see a relationship blossom every time they see each other on a train, but it's only in the small gestures of giving a newspaper or giving up a seat for somebody else, or just the way those interactions that human beings have where they don't say anything, and an entire conversation happens between two people. So maybe an entire arc of a relationship, from friendship to flirting to almost love to respect to perhaps even their fights. Come from their micro interactions with each other and no dialogue.
that would be a brilliant arc. I think that would also be really great in terms of maybe the one that comes with people's discomfort on race and stuff like that. So we can start with someone literally just moving away. We see that happen a lot. We see
people
that
don't sit
a
next
lot.
to me. I know that's odd.
Like
I'm
you've got a beard and a backpack. That's it. You're done.
But I'm the last person to be sat next to on the tube, which is really unusual. I've just noticed that as something that happens. Not that I have an objection to it because I get to sit on my own.
And man spread as well.
And man spread, as I've been known to do. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that's a really good way to
that's
start
probably
it.
the one, and we can see he obviously Danny Boyle would bring that round somehow to show how there's a unification within that.
Yeah.
Somehow, even with that, there's this whole being an ally in terms of on the tube, of being in the way, interposing yourself, aren't you? You've seen a lot of that, especially with we're going to go back to upskirting again. We had upskirting one of the other weeks. Yeah, but before the law came out, you saw a lot of people deliberately standing in the way of cameras and stuff like that. And I wonder whether that's the way we're meant to ally ourselves, isn't it? In fact, Sarah and I had on the tube the other day, some guy absolutely someone wheeled over his foot with a suitcase.
Right.
And it was a typical London thing, because the guy was embarrassed that he'd run over his foot with a suitcase, and he went, "You all right, mate?" Instead of like, "Sorry, I ran over your foot."
Yeah.
"You all right, mate?" And the other guy's like, "I'm not all right. I'm absolutely not all right." And then he got his newspaper and smacked him in the face like twice. And I was like, I turned around and went, "Hang on." Like,
Yeah.
Maybe not. He's like, "It's just his fault. He didn't apologise. He just comes in here." And I was like, okay, there's a lot of, quite obviously.
Yeah.
And at which point Sarah stepped in, because it became, I think we decided that she would be able to diffuse that easier than a man would be able to diffuse that. But it's about being in the vicinity. So we then stood in between them. We didn't say anything more, but we kind of became that barrier. And I wonder whether that's part of...
It's interesting that you say that, actually, yeah, because I witnessed a fight between two people on a train where they went from arguing to almost fist fighting. And there's a moment where every person in the cabin who feels like they could step in, male or female, just anyone who feels like they could step in, does a room check.
Yes,
of like
called,
who else is
it's-
bigger than me, who's going to step in instead of me,
Yeah.
who can do
It's
this.
called
And
bystander syndrome.
yeah, but then I think also what happens on the tube often, I've noticed, or on the train, is it trickles down and someone will do something, but it trickles down the social hierarchy
Yeah.
where I'm quite weedy and I probably couldn't fight, but I would step in if necessary.
Yeah.
But I hope that there's another guy who could do it instead of me, so I do
Yeah.
a quick scan around.
But these are exactly the things that would be so relatable within this film. Like we'd
Yeah.
have moments of that. And even in those interactions between two lines, maybe those kind of things happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm keen to get because you could lean heavily on the iconography of the tube and the London network for the posters and the trailers and some of the credits, fonts and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that what you'd want to do, or would you want to do something different with it? How would you want to bring a poster or a trailer to us, or viral marketing? Could you, in fact, viral marketing on the tube could be a good idea as well.
Yeah,
Some
yeah,
sort of-
absolutely.
Because they did that recently with Picard, didn't they? Where
Yeah.
they changed Piccadilly Circus to
Piccadilly.
Piccadilly
I wonder.
Circus.
I wonder whether there would be super meme stuff with actually having a couple of the scenes play out on the tube in real life, not filmed,
That's interesting.
and so that would socially
That's some proper
get itself
viral
out. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Some of the bigger ones.
Experiential marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind that feels Danny Boyle too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Then it gets
I-
publicised in the newspapers and stuff.
Absolutely.
and-
Yeah.
I might also feel like a way Danny Boyle might do it is literally go in. Didn't he film 28 Days Later with handycams?
Yeah, they just went
So he
in-
would maybe he would literally go in to busy rush hour
Yeah.
and just with two unknown actors and a handycam and just do it.
And just
Well,
share it
I think each line maybe could be filmed in a different style as well. Maybe
There's a
one
hidden
even
camera
mobile phone,
section.
hidden
Yeah,
camera, full. Because I think the big story that we're looking at is this older guy, younger girl. He helps her
Okay.
through
Yeah.
some of her sort of teenage angst and stuff that's going on, and she helps him maybe realise he's a valued member of the society and stuff like that. And that's a District Line one because it's like the longest line known to man, isn't it? Like it just goes on forever and ever and
Yeah,
ever.
yeah.
And he is from Upminster right until the other end. Like she
Interesting.
never
Yeah.
sees him get off. And then the one day that he's not there, we kind of assume that he's not there anymore. And that's the title. That's where
Yeah.
this train terminates. Is his termination.
Yeah, I like
effectively.
it. Oh wow, yeah.
So-
possibly of his life, or,
Yeah.
or of their relationship.
Or of their
possibly as
relationship,
well.
yeah, and maybe those two things do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So maybe the finale of it is that we actually see her get off the train when she finds out where he lives or whatever, and goes to his house, and there's the funeral there or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Yeah,
So maybe that's the only time we leave the tube is to see
and
this
then
one.
that relief is something that you get right at the end.
Yeah.
But even in fact, you could even do something where it comes at the end, but chronologically it's at the start, something like that,
Yeah.
so that you feel almost sort of like it's full circle in some way.
yeah.
You know,
Circle,
something like
full
that.
circle line.
Full circle line. I want to also throw in mind the gaps, and then have like as a log line, as a
Nice it.
tagline.
Nice it.
You know, as a sort of, you shouldn't have your cake and eat it. You can have the short
Yeah.
terms and mind the gaps.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
Have like just, on the poster, just very obvious gaps between people when with lots of space in between them and in the seats.
I love it. And the poster would obviously be, because he's still trying to create this. Maybe it could be set in the Olympic. No, it feels like it should be set modern day as well, but with 5 underground tube lines, but all in different colours of the Olympic colours, all overlined with each other.
So maybe it could take place and you don't recognise it until the end over a time period spanning from the Olympics to now.
Yeah, actually,
You
that's a
don't
really great
realise
idea.
it, but one's
Yeah.
during the Olympics, one's during perhaps the day after 7/7, because people still commute. They still have to do these things.
That was before.
That was long before.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So maybe we have that. Maybe we have 2012. Maybe we have the referendum. Maybe we have some of the big sort of like
The
moments.
London Bridge attacks.
We could
Yeah.
have some of those weaved into.
Yeah, yeah.
Not, but I don't think overtly.
No.
Either. I don't think we ever address them
No,
directly.
you don't want to tackle these things head on in a
No.
way that isn't sort of tactful. But I think it is important to notice that, like, if there's a bomb scare at London Bridge, people still get home and they have to get on a train thinking like, you know, is this the train that has also been targeted or something? So I think that's sort of a big part of. I think you can say it's I don't know, staying power is the right word, but this sort of British resilience that hopefully can overcome racism, can overcome terrorism, can overcome these things is perhaps a point you want to make subtly, right?
Post 7/7, I was working in town at the time on a show, and we when it went off, obviously no one could get home. My brother was also working in town, and my uncle and my mum, I think. My dad had a horrible day that day. My mum had gone through Liverpool Street 10 minutes before that one went off. My brother was on the train behind the one that went off in King's Cross, and I was in central London, around the corner from where the bus went off.
Yeah.
So, and then of course he couldn't get hold of any of us. So
Yeah,
it was
sure,
but
sure.
at the end of the day, we couldn't use the tubes. Everyone walked home from London, and everyone walked together.
Well, that's the end of the film. Isn't
We rang each other.
I don't want to devalue the event, of course.
No. But we rang each other and we found out where each other were, and I met my brother, and when I met my brother there were hundreds of people walking together. My mum joined us, there were like...
Sort of solidarity, isn't it?
Yeah, and we all walked together back home, even though my uncle lived in like Dagenham, we walked all the way out there. And then my dad picked us up from there, I think. But it's just extraordinary how life goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the end of the movie. That's the point of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the overall point you want to make. And sort of, even in the face of the micro atrocities that a person goes through in their own lives, rather than just the macro that everybody experiences in different ways. But life still goes on from the micro.
And maybe we see all of the people that we've met on each of the lines walking home.
That would be perfect.
That's it, isn't it?
You know,
That's
all
it.
in that group of people.
Yeah, with the exception of the man.
Yeah.
Who the old man. And maybe she's finally got a picture of him or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, something
Yeah,
really...
yeah.
No, I don't want it to be cheesy, but there is something to be said for some of these beautiful relationships that get made and hold treasuring a stranger. Do you know what I mean? Like we've all done it. Like someone that's become a friend, but you'd never hang out outside of a specific box.
Maybe the person that missed the train at the start is the person that we recognise at the end, and then the woman just sparks up a conversation with that person. So a new relationship will continue. Something like that.
Perfect.
And I think I've just had just when I look at a poster in my head, I just see a side view of a carriage, and I see people sitting down on every seat, and I see those figure drawings that you get in sort of manuals for fixing cars and stuff like that, and they all have things written next to them that are either profiling them as things to look out for, or things that you would stereotype someone as, or the opposite, things that they actually are like. Or maybe you have two posters. One that on the tube, when you're looking up and you see the two posters, you've got one that stereotypes them, and then one that actually tells you who they are and what they do.
Yeah.
And you're like, these people are not the things. This guy's not a terrorist because he's got a backpack and a beard.
Yeah.
He's actually a social worker or something. And this, or just the ideas of, this duality of what you see first and then what you learn about somebody when you get to know them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of metro systems and like around the world, because we've got a worldwide listening base, and they sort of have those advertising that's above the seats. So having like arrows that point down at actual people, going back to the guerrilla marketing thing.
That's good as well.
So it's like this person is whatever, this person's a mum, and it could just be anyone who sits under it, but it's that's the example of what it is.
Which leads to hilarious social
Yeah,
media stuff.
They people take pictures of themselves under the things and post it, hashtag it and all that.
Look, we've done it. That's it. Stamp. That's my
great.
pitch.
I'd also like to say, if you're watching it on Netflix, eventually one of the posters will probably be just a lot of different types of shoes. You just see
I love
that
it.
ground level view on the
Yeah.
tube. Just so many different types
Perfect.
of shoes.
Perfect.
From so many different walks of life. So, I think that is a entirely robust and serious pitch for the beginning of episode 3.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm quite excited about it. I suppose there's a few things I might ask just in terms of how do you think it would be when it's released? How do you think it would be reviewed and received? And I also want to know how you think it sounds. Like I like when we hear it being too loud for certain characters.
I think there's
What's the oral soundscape?
the oral soundscape is going to be the tube.
Okay.
Right. So it's going to be we'll have people's headphones listening to stuff, so we can have that, and then that obviously become then into the scene. But I think the more that we have just live tube sound all the way through, obviously edited or whatever, the better we can build some kind of sort of EDM out of that. Out of
Absolutely,
that. And maybe there's transition music as we go through, but I think it should feel quite empty. That the means we're focusing on. And any soundtrack is soundtrack from people's music.
Sure. And sometimes just the buzz of a few people talking and the noise,
Yeah.
it just has that simmering level of sort of, that's really interesting.
Well, one thing I just love about the being on the tube is watching people. And one of my favourite things is listen to podcasts on my commutes in and out of work. And when you see other people doing it and they are having to stifle laughter.
They're they're listening to Slash Tube.
Yeah, no, listen to Slash, of course they're welcome. But I've forgotten that I'm on a tube sometimes and genuinely laughed out loud and had to put my hands over my mouth. And it's really embarrassing. And I think so you could totally see that sort of thing.
Yeah, we got that. And we've got busker music floating down as well at stations.
Of course, that's great.
Which could lead to just being there in the background. We don't notice it. Like, even though the tube's moving, that busker music's still playing if it's relevant to
to
what's
linger
going
in their
on.
memory, in the minds of the people.
Absolutely. So for me, who would be normally music heavy, I think this is a
I like
very
that.
music light.
And when it's released, how do you think it would?
I think critically, people would be very scared not to give it.
Yes, it's one of those.
It's one of those.
5 stars. Danny Boyle return to form.
Exactly.
It's the film we need right now. All that sort of stuff.
And I think in terms of actuality, it will be a great film.
Yeah.
But I think it will spark crazy debate on social media.
Right.
I think it's the kind of thing that people will talk like. Certain papers will have real problems with it, and they'll try and so it will either go from 1 star to 5 star dependent on how they feel about it. There'll be no middle ground, and people will know that the 1 star really means that it's a 5-star movie, that kind of thing. I think it's very well. I don't think it will win any awards though because of the subject matter that it's dealing with, and I think
maybe some BAFTAs, but BAFTAs. America won't really take.
They won't get it.
Yeah. They won't get it.
I mean that in the nicest way to all our American listeners. But it will feel that it's quite of its era and of its location.
Yeah. Okay. I really like that. I love that idea. In fact,
Let's shoot it. I'll get Danny on the phone.
I think he's a listener, actually.
yeah, Danny, contact us. You have our number.
Come on the pod.
Right. Thanks, Dan.
Smashed it. Did not expect that. Well done. Thank you, everyone, for going with me.
No, it was good
literal
fun. It was
tube
good fun.
journey.
And I'm very, very intrigued to hear your idea, Becki, and because I just want to preface your idea with the fact that I've mentioned this a lot, but my idea is rubbish. So it's not going to do. I mean, following on from the notion that Dan's was incredibly serious and actually turned out to be something quite meaningful and heartfelt. Mine is horrendous. So if yours sits anywhere in between those two, that's okay. It doesn't have to be as serious and lofty as that.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I am about to ruin the heartwarming vibe, guys. I'm really sorry in advance.
Someone has to. And we're all grateful.
So, you've seen snakes on a plane. Now try Sean Bean on a train.
That, I'm in. That's amazing.
I love it.
Yeah. So, it's a B-movie horror in the proper kind of like old school, splashy, fun way. We are going absolutely with like... So, it's like a very Ron Seal title on this one.
Yeah,
so
sure.
what you read on the poster is very much what you get with
Right.
This Train Terminates. So it's all going to be set on the kind of picturesque Riviera line that runs in Devon all the way along the coast. So the sea literally coming up to the train line. So our horror movie opens with this atmospheric shot, and it's nighttime. The full moon is out. The tracks are empty. You've got waves like crashing on the rocks below. And a young couple starts sort of picking their way down the rocks because, as we know with old school horror, we have to open with the idea that sex is bad.
Yes.
So they're on their way to their romantic tryst, but she gets her high heels stuck in the train track.
Oh, no.
What are they going to do? So our hero hears the train coming down the track, and he whips his shirt off, naturally, of course, and starts waving it like railway children style to try and stop the train, and the like brakes are squealing, and it's coming to a halt, and just in front of the couple, grinds to a halt, and we think, oh my goodness, they're going to make it past the prologue. But then, the headlights change colour. They go red. They're like demonic eyes in the dark. And the train starts going again, and splat, up comes the
that's
title.
amazing.
And
I love it.
Yep, because this train is possessed by demonic forces, and that's why This Train terminates.
That's superb.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, obviously our star is actually going to be Sean Bean.
Yeah.
He is a grizzled detective who's been called in to work out why people keep dying on the Riviera line. And he's great for horror because the audience spend the whole time trying to work out when is Sean Bean
When's he
going
going to die?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, so he's absolutely perfect for this film, but he's joined by some notable cameos. So we've got Michael Kane as a train driver who's noticed something odd about this train, and he actually goes to Sean Bean and says, look, I'm concerned it's the train itself. I was in the cab that night when they died, but then the next night shift, he's in the cab alone and the buttons start flashing and the levers start going and it fills up with steam and it boils him alive. Now, this is not a steam train, but that's still how
possessed
Michael
with the
Caine
ghost
died.
of a steam train, perhaps.
So it's a proper,
That's amazing.
Yeah, proper old school horror death there. Then we've got Richard Iowadi working the ticket office in Teignmouth, and he gives our hero these kind of like prophetic announcements every morning. So it'll be things like, there has been a passenger incident on platform number 2, and then it kind of leads you into the next discovery of a death.
Is that your Richard O'Addy impression? by
I
the way?
cannot do a Richard Iowadi impression, as we are all now horribly aware. And then we've also got Kathy Bates. She
wow,
is a
interesting.
ticket inspector on the train who turns out to have psychic abilities. And she reveals to our hero that the reason why the train is possessed is that once, when they were doing essential maintenance work, a corrupt construction company decided they were going to call upon demonic forces to get it done on time. Now, as we know, this goes against the natural order of things.
Of course. Yeah,
So the train line gets cursed, and we end up with a demonic train.
Yeah.
I would
Now,
say
is
that
the train line cursed or is the train cursed? So if any other train sets foot on it, does it also become cursed?
So it is this specific train in this case. So think of it as like it's a manifestation through this train.
Okay.
So all the other trains are running fine. It's just this
Okay.
particular
Right.
murderous vehicle, which is why in order to win at the end, our hero's got to try and kill this train. So
the
naturally it's
train.
got to be a derailment, right? Because that's how we
Yes.
kill a train.
Yeah.
So, he's piled rocks on the line, he's jammed a signal, everything's kind of ready to go. So, Sean Bean at the big climactic moment is steaming down the coast, it's all ready to hit the rocks. And so he sort of turns and looks almost straight down the camera lens and goes, this train is cancelled, and jumps into the sea.
Yeah.
That's our big
Perfect.
moment.
Yeah.
Jumps into C as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. But then, of course, I mean, this is a horror. So we've got
Yeah.
to have our, post-credits moment. So sort of end of Indiana Jones style, we're going to pan across this huge train shed, looking down all the lines of the trains, kind of just standing there empty. And we've got 2 people standing by this very new-looking train with a clipboard, so we know they're important. And they basically say, oh, it's amazing. You can really recycle anything these days. You can even make a new train from old parts, even if it's derailed.
Why would they do that?
I know. It's like they just haven't noticed
Yeah.
that all these people were dying on this line. But then, as they walk away and leave the train, the headlights come on. And then they turn red. And we think,
Here
we're
we go
set
again.
up. We're
And
set
Sean
up.
Bean's dead now because he's thrown himself in the sea. So
But actually, Sean Bean survived. But
twist.
this is the thing. So after the amazing commercial success, obviously, of this film, we need a
course.
sequel because
Yeah.
the audience do need to know when Sean Bean dies.
Yeah.
But our hero now has a sort of innate phobia of going on trains. Understandable.
Yeah.
So he will only travel by road. But little does he know, he's therefore walking into the events of This Train Terminates 2, Rail Replacement Bus.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Jeez.
That is phenomenal. And it's the 2 TOO because it's the train terminating as well.
Actually, yes, I
Or
like
is
that.
that-
Let's do
no,
that.
that's
Am I
brilliant.
pushing it too far?
100%.
That's
Let's
brilliant.
do that.
Okay.
And of course, the rail
Rail
replacement,
replacement.
it
I love
lasts twice as long and never really finishes properly.
This is
Yeah,
the
as a
thing.
sequel. Yeah.
I feel like there could be some element of maybe like soul sucking that happens
Love
with
it.
demonic possession on the rail replacement bus. That feels appropriate.
Very appropriate.
That's superb.
Yeah, I feel like there's
and
a
you can
world
only
of
watch
stuff.
it on weekends.
Yeah. And when you really want to be watching something else instead.
When you really need something, that's when you have
But
to
it's just as expensive as a good film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Go on.
So you said the train line got cursed years ago. Who is the actor that's like, if you use that, it's going to be cursed rails for years, or who is that person?
Somebody has to know the
Yeah.
the lore and the
sort of-
legacy.
like
or
the-
maybe he meets them partway through or something. Yeah, someone
That
has
would be
to
great.
Like the person, who is that person?
We should
Who's
definitely
that
have a good
actor?
cameo there. That's a really good point. Ooh.
And the thing is, you've got Kathy Bates in it already, so,
Yeah.
so it can't be
Yeah.
Kathy Bates, right?
Yeah.
So,
like,
someone's
where do
got
we
to
go
out
from there?
Kathy Bates. Kathy
Yeah,
Bates.
exactly.
Like this is difficult.
It's got to be someone who's like a prospector, like the sort of like that sort of stuff. Maybe not an actual prospector, but like someone who's like that sort of a bit the town kook, right? Or
But we've got to sort of. Did you say it was set in Cornwall?
Yeah,
on the
Devon,
Riviera of
Devon,
Devon. We've got to Devonify that. You know.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
got,
yeah,
can't
absolutely.
be a prospector. It has
Yeah,
to be
pirate.
some sort of. Has to be a pirate.
It's got to be
Yeah.
a pirate, hasn't it?
Or to be fair, I could really see like someone like Jim Broadbent just kind of
Yes,
being
love
there
it.
as
Yeah,
like
yeah.
now
Nailed it.
he's worked the line for years, he's seen everything, and he just kind of has that one little moment, really sinister,
Yeah.
just under his peaked cap. You know,
Oh, yeah,
he's
I mean-
got that kind of yeah.
It's superb.
Is he maybe regaling the tale? I remember my first day on the job, and he was the original clipboard guy, and then he saw the red eyes of the train the first time,
But he said nothing.
and he said, and it shocked him too, and he disappeared for years, and no one can find him, and then that's how they understand that it's cursed.
Maybe he gives the knowledge to Sean Bean.
Yeah, maybe he just couldn't live with himself because
Yeah.
he realised that he
Yeah.
should have said something all those years ago, and now he wants to be the one to help the hero win. But, you know, he's a little bit past it now. He doesn't feel like he's capable of, you know, jumping into the sea
Maybe
and
he
all that kind of
shows
yeah.
him where the train resides off the abandoned track, and that's how he dies. That's how Jim Broadbent dies. Then, the train's through here, and then suddenly the lights
this
red
is where
in
it
the
sort
tunnel.
of lives. It's in this
lair.
yard.
Yeah.
This
He
sort
has
of-
to change the signal, and the signal gets stuck, and he has to go onto the train
Tracks to do
tracks
it.
to pull it, and he does. He does.
And he
so.
redeems himself
redeems
through
himself.
sacrifice.
Yes, he's
Yeah.
sacrificed
Yeah.
himself. Oh, that is perfect.
That's brilliant.
Jim
Well done,
Broadbent,
Jim.
Great casting.
He would really pull that off as well.
He
I think
would,
he'd
wouldn't
really
he?
tug your heartstrings at the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
moment there. Oh, perfect.
Brilliant. So is this something that has been based on like a Stephen King book? Like, what?
I just had this idea of like him taking his like like the train star, the train conductor hats, and just wants it and just puts it on his heart,
On his chest.
on his
As the
chest,
train
and closes
hits
his
him.
eyes as the train hits him.
Singing
Yeah.
"Abide with Me."
Yeah.
Or he'll take it off and dust it off out of his pocket because he hasn't worn it since that day.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Perfect.
That's too
great.
perfect.
Perfect.
So is this like Christine? Is it based on a book by Stephen King? Is it based on a trashy book by an author, or is this just a fresh idea for a film?
So I think it's definitely based on a lot of tropes. So to be fair, like Stephen King is not a bad comparison because obviously he's done a lot of things to do with like haunted objects, vehicles, places, all that kind of thing. Like that goes through a lot of his work. But I think because this would also be a very British take on that, we'd want quite a bit of dry humour going in there, just on like the politics of how our trains always do nefarious things. And you know, there's a lot of other kind of like dark humour and stuff laced in there. So this is a film that's not taking itself too seriously.
Right, yeah.
But just every now and again
Okay.
we'll just throw in a nice moment. That's why I love your moment there with Jim Broadbent. I feel like we could really just flip the switch on the audience a little bit, make them go,
ham it
actually
up.
I'm having a moment
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
You know?
So it's supposed to be good and self-referential and fourth wall. It's not supposed to be a film that's like sort of made to be, or rather, it's made to be bad rather than made to be good and everybody laughs at it.
It's knowing.
made
It's
to be-
knowing in
knowing.
itself.
It knows about itself. It's
It's meant to be fun so
Yeah,
that you come
okay.
away and you feel like, you know, yes, you've got the horror elements that made you genuinely jump, but you've also laughed a lot. You've got kind of invested
Yeah.
in it,
Okay.
but you know it's silly enough that actually anything could happen.
Is
You're-
it Sharknado levels?
Kind of that vibe. Although I feel like the nice thing about it being set on a train is actually because what you probably won't have is so much of kind of like the bad CGI and
Yeah,
stuff that you get in those kind
Yeah,
of big
it grounds
splashy
you.
B movies like Sharknado. I think instead you've got that slightly more grounded thing, which also lends itself to the drier humour.
Yeah.
Because you get the low key jokes in there and they
Definitely.
sit nicely under that.
yeah.
So,
It's a
but
nice
yeah.
sort of Cornwall sort of country humour as
And
well.
literally the
coast
only way we
humour.
know this train is evil is that the headlights turn red. That's it. That's the kind. There's no more
and
than that. That's
steam
all we
pours
need.
out of it, like
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though it's
Full
not a steam
Christine,
train.
isn't it? Basically,
Yeah.
there's no extra effects. You just know
Yeah.
that car is now evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you're like visually told, and I feel like there should be excessive use of smoke machines on this
of
production.
course. Absolutely.
Again, not a steam train.
Yeah,
but just,
yeah.
like,
No,
just
I
always
completely
smoke
agree.
and steam
Yeah.
everywhere for
Yeah,
some reason.
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's, you know, that's the vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe part of the parts that they used were from a steam train.
Yeah.
Like the wheels or the
yeah.
From like in the
pistons.
sort of early I don't know,
They
19th
dug it
century.
up
It's
from
like an old-
some kind of grave, mass
Train
grave.
What are they-
That's
yeah,
why.
yeah.
What are they
Train
doing?
graveyard. Love it.
What do they do in Futurama with the wear car? Where it's like the steering wheel of like Adolf Hitler's car and like the wheels of something else, and it's like
Could be that. Didn't Hitler make this this amazing train that's supposed to have been I don't know.
Are we now going to Hitler's train in this?
Okay, that's a little. Maybe in the sequel, that's where they retcon in some stuff.
No, that's.
They go, actually, it was from Hitler's train and all this, and you add more lore in the sequel, don't you? That nobody wants.
That's the spin-off to Iron Sky. That's Iron Rails.
Yeah. I think this is a fantastic idea,
great.
and I do think somebody should make it.
I have a question on location. So, what made you pick the Riviera line in Devon?
So because I used to live down there, and I used to love that train line because it's so beautiful and very kind of like stunning when you go down there, because it's really unusual to have a train that runs that close to the coast, to the point where while I was down there was a patch of really bad weather and some of it washed away. Like, it is unbelievably close to the sea, which if you're making this kind of like horror piece, actually the landscape you're in is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you should be able to isolate your characters. The area
Yeah.
should be scary, because if they could just jump off and they're just in some shrubbery in Milton Keynes, it's not very scary.
Yes.
So-
Although Milton Keynes shrubbery can be quite scary. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's great to couple this sort of foreboding locale with a beautiful locale as well. It's sort of beautiful but lonely, and it's got this sort of duality to it. You know, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Have you thought about a writer or a director or anyone that would sort of helm this piece? I know it's going to be you, obviously, but if this film was made, when would it be made and by whom? Have you thought, or even just a tone? If you're not saying it's made by Eli Roth, but you're saying it's got the tone of this director, or it's got the tone of this, so who can you think of that sort of would lend themselves to this material?
So I think because it is a very British thing, I think it would need to be a British director and writer, because obviously you're trying to get some humour. Again, it's a little bit like what we were saying earlier. Like, sometimes you might find that things don't translate so well to an audience or to a mind if it's not a reference that you get or kind of uniquely understand. I think when we talk about British trains, we all feel the same frustrations and we like share the same references. So, I mean, if he wasn't kind of far too big to do this now, in a way, it's an Edgar Wright style thing. It's about being able to do the big, fun, splashy set pieces, get the jokes out, but also have some pretty heartfelt moments
It totally
in there.
feels like that.
Okay. So it's his sort of hardcore, although he's doing a horror film at the moment, isn't he? He's doing that sort of Made in Soho or whatever it's called. But it could be the sort of thing where he's done it as a short for, another Quentin Tarantino project. He's done a trailer for it. It resonates, and Tarantino's production company funds him to do a feature-length one.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. It comes out as like an Edgar Wright and Eli Roth Grindhouse double feature or something. You know?
And are the
It's like-
space lot involved in this? Are they?
See, I suppose that's a good point. Now I've
interesting.
said that, actually, yeah, because you couldn't do it without them. But then maybe what you could have fun with is you could introduce them, because obviously we've got to have a lot of deaths. This is a horror.
Yes.
You could have great fun with introducing them as passengers and then just bumping them off. And everyone's like, but this is an Edgar Wright film. How on earth have you got Simon Pegg in it for 5 minutes?
Surely Simon Pegg will be. There'll be the two inspectors at the end, won't they?
Oh, with the clipboard.
With the clipboard.
Simon Pegg and Nick
That's
Frost.
nice,
There we
Yeah, Simon Pegg
go.
and Nick Frost right at the end.
Which Steven Seagal movie is it where he dies in the first 5 minutes?
Oh, I don't know. Is it the one with Kurt Russell in it?
I can't remember this, and I can't remember the name of the title. But they're on an aeroplane, and he's like an SAS, and they're taking over this plane. They've hijacked it, or he's with it, and he dies in the first 5 minutes. You're like, Steven Seagal's dead. What the? And it's perfect. It's utterly. I'm going to look it up.
Does he
and
come back
I'll
as a
in the break.
ghost?
No, that's it. He's absolutely done, and that would be brilliant with Simon Pegg, because you'd be like,
Yeah.
because he's big now.
Yeah,
Simon
yeah,
Pegg.
yeah,
He
definitely.
comes in, and he's the first one to die.
Oh, they did that in the second G.I. Joe film. They did all the marketing with Channing Tatum, and then he dies in the first 5
yeah,
minutes.
perfect.
Spoiler.
Because actually, if you made the couple at the beginning,
For
you know,
G.I.
if
Joe
you
2.
brought in like Simon Pegg and maybe like Olivia Colman, and you're like, well, these guys
Yeah,
are big.
Olivia
They've got to be
Colman.
the star of the whole film.
Yeah, yeah.
So when the train then actually hits them, you're like, okay, I was not expecting
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
like,
definitely.
that's not a thing.
I know
So,
it's definitely the Olivia Colman reference, but I feel like David Tennant has to be in there. He just has to have a cameo
Is it
somewhere.
getting all the big sort of... Does Judi Dench make it? Does Dane...
Judi Dench should make
Judi
it
Dench make it in there at some point?
She was the original one who commissioned the rails to be built.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
And then you youthify her, don't you? You get like a previous version of it.
You don't
DH her.
need... You do not need to
because she can just be
youthify...
in that time period be an older rail lady. It was my husband's dream to build a rail.
Yes.
Dame Judi Dench is beautiful. You don't need to do a thing to it.
Yes,
very
that's
true.
true.
She
That's
is
true.
timeless.
She is timeless.
Because
As this film
she's
will
made
be.
pacts with ghost trains. That's what.
I love it. I think it's a perfect idea, and perhaps there's a trend coming in because my favourite part is the poster and the teaser. But I want to know, this train terminates the sort of self-knowing horror film, what would we see when we're advertised as the next Edgar Wright film?
I mean, I do wonder whether if you were really going to lean into what we were saying earlier about like really flipping the switch on your big name actors getting killed at the start, you could even put Simon and Olivia on the train tracks in the poster with the demonic lights behind them. And everyone's like, I feel like I know what's happening going in. And it's you do not.
And what will happen is they do die in the same way. It's like that is the moment before they die.
And you're like, yeah, exactly. I told you.
I was thinking a poster that during the day had the train on the front of it and the actual lights were 2 actual lights, and then at night
they turn red.
Look at this. We're really pushing the boat out on marketing now.
I mean, I do have a degree in it.
It's like the Dracula advertising where they had the knives in the board. Oh no, it's stakes in the board. Sorry, of course it was. Stakes in the board, and then the shadow changed from day to night.
I didn't know that.
To cast a different shadow.
That's cool.
It's really worth looking up. Someone posted a video of it. It's great.
We saw these posters for the Matrix Reloaded years ago, and when you walk past them, it would be Neo from Code to Neo putting on glasses, and then
that was so cool.
Was that holographic then?
Yeah. I've never seen a poster like it ever since.
Yeah, they were cool. Yeah, that's wicked. All right, and I need to see the typography. I need to, and again, I say typography a lot in this, but I want to see how are you going to show us this train terminate? Is it going to be like, it came from the deep? That sort of, where it looks like it's made out of sort of blood, but it's not red because they couldn't show it in red or something back in the day, like an old black and white movie.
So I'm thinking that the typography should have an effect on it so it looks as though, because obviously, like I said, we're doing far too much smoke and steam in this production, as though like you're shining all the smoke and steam and it's been projected as though by red headlights. Perfect. So it's like it's shining the text up at you.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
big,
great.
splashy font.
Yeah, that is great.
I've got another one. So like a long poster. So it's from the sea, the shot of the Riviera train line so the first 3/4 of it will be the train. Then the last quarter is someone on the tracks with the red headlights, and this train terminates is the steam coming out of the train along it.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Or
it's
even
literally casting it onto
With the font that they use for Murder, She Wrote.
Ooh.
Is it very sort of is it like a typewriter font?
No, it's a bit more flowy, isn't it?
It's like written. It looks as though it's been like written by.
Yeah, sure.
And I've always loved that about it because it feels like it's the murder mystery author writing it, and I can definitely see that.
That makes sense. And it's got a feel because it feels like Murder on the Orient Express already. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, but we twisted it.
Cast.
Yeah, it does. It feels like you almost market it as a sort of horror version of that, but then that's not actually what it is when you go into it.
Then the train eats people.
Yeah. I love it. And how does it, just a final question I've got, how does the train kill people? Does it just run them over every time, or are there creative ways that this train can knock people off? Because after a while, you're going to want to see some different things, aren't you?
I think it should always be shaken up every time. So we'll hit them at the start, but then like I said, you'll have like the steam in the carriage kind of boiling in,
That's
like hand smack on the window, skids down, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like each thing could maybe just be a different set piece that works in a train context. You could maybe have fun with the toilet door of the train, maybe even the toilet
doors.
of the train.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, going back to the snakes on a plane reference,
the way they suck things out when you press the thing.
Yeah.
Someone's wedding ring falls in there and they go to get it,
Someone's caught between carriages and they split and then they get balls.
Yeah,
love it.
that
Do you remember those?
works.
So I don't know if who's the same age, but they had, when we were in school, they actually showed us videos of how to have good tube acumen. So it was like, do not cross through the carriages at this point while the train's moving, and then it showed the train turning around the corner and it crushed someone to death. So these are the videos I watched in school.
That explains a lot about you.
And do you know why? Because I went
why you wanted to make this film.
Yeah. So I went to school in Epping, and that's on the end of the Central Line. So I think they had to upskill us.
Is that where the train terminates?
It is. So I think they have to upskill you in case you wander onto the tube, right? Or in case you want to get it into London. So, because no one I've talked to has ever had that. And if you have had that at home, put it in the comments because I feel alone in this. But they would tell us how not to get squished in between, and it was horrific.
Was it a dream?
It made a nightmare, maybe. Yeah, but it was horrific. So I can see that happening and genuinely giving me nightmares. The idea of being stuck between carriages, hurtling through a tunnel, or maybe the door shutting and your leg's out there and the leg gets torn off as it goes out
or you head out the window on the
and
tunnel.
their body just comes straight back in without a head and sits back down.
Perfect. Sits down.
Sits back down. Yeah. She's like, you never listen to me. You're always not in your own head. Or
Newspaper's still in hand.
Yeah, newspaper's still in hand. That's horrific, isn't it?
It's perfect.
But you know what? And maybe no one notices because they're all on their phone.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah.
That's the pre-title death, isn't it? And then that sort of... Oh, I mean, you have the pre-title death with the classic scene, obviously.
Yeah.
But you have to have some sort of moment there, don't you, where Edgar Wright's saying something about the current state of, our sort of technology and our train use. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And how would it be received, do you think? As it is intended? Would Mark Commode go, do you know what, I had a great time, that was hilarious? Or would he go, it wasn't for me and...
Jump the shark here.
Yeah.
I think it would be one of those films where a lot of critics were happy to admit that they enjoyed it, but not that they thought it was like a particularly cerebral or worthy watch.
Yeah.
So like, we're not talking awards, we're just talking people saying, actually, do you know what? I've had a great time.
Yeah.
I'd crack that on again on a Saturday night
Yeah.
with friends. It's a good popcorn movie. That's the vibe.
I'll still watch Edgar Wright's next film. It hasn't put me off.
Hasn't ruined me.
It
Yeah.
hasn't ruined it. Yeah, him.
Does it become a cult classic? Does it become one of those things where you have a drinking game because you have to drink every time someone dies or someone says
Foreshadows their
own death or things like that?
Or like makes a really bad train-related joke.
Absolutely,
Or like
which-
anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Okay.
So I think it's one of those where it does become kind of, when the sequel comes out, the audience is almost entirely made up of people who got genuinely quite hyped that they were going for another bad kind of horror movie.
Right, yeah.
Like that's definitely the tone.
Yeah, I like that. And the sequel, does it hit the right mark for the fans, or is it just off the mark for them? Rail replacement.
I
This
think the
Train
sequel
Terminates
never
2.
lives up to the original because the rail replacement bus is never going to live up to a train.
No, it never
like,
is.
It appropriately is a bit disappointing,
Yeah.
bit too long, could
Yeah.
have done with being a bit quicker,
Yeah.
got a bit caught down somewhere along the way.
And not directed by Edgar Wright as well, so someone else
Yes,
has taken
of
it
course.
over.
Yeah.
Nick Frost's directorial debut, for example, he'd try and tackle it, wouldn't he? Something like that. He'd sort of go, I can do this. Edgar Wright and I wrote the script together. I can do this, and it just won't be as good, I like that. And he plays the bus driver, doesn't he? Stuff like that. Okay, listen, we don't have time to go into the sequel for this, but that is a stunningly different idea from Dan's, and brilliant in all the same ways. So I'm very excited about it. Thanks for pitching that, Becki. Thank you very much. So now's a good time to refresh everybody about the stakes. So at the end of this episode, I will pick a winner. There'll be no particular reason why I will pick a winner. It'll just be the one that resonates towards me. And I don't think anyone's in competition at this point because all ideas, have their own merits, and we're all building them together. So it's definitely not a personal thing if an idea isn't.
Ryan's in
picked.
competition with everyone.
Ryan is. That's just his whole MO.
That's just me. Yeah.
And we'll get to the dupe momentarily to hear Ryan's improvised idea. But I think that we're still figuring out the best way to do this, but the end goal will be to make the winning idea into a trailer. So we're going to make it, if it's a TV idea, a film idea, whatever it is, we're going to make it into a trailer that best represents the idea that was pitched at the time.
Best represents the pitch at the time?
Best represents loosely the pitch that was given to us at the time, with no involvement from the person who pitched it, and no say, which is sort of what happens in real life.
Yeah.
So we're going to put this process through a potentially quarterfinal, semi-finals, or a heat down the line, and we'll let you guys know how you can vote for your favourites that have gone into the semi-finals, and eventually you guys will select a winner for us, and we will make that into a trailer. So that's the end goal of this, to embarrass ourselves in a physical way so that you can see us all embarrass ourselves. And also, if you don't agree with any of the winners so far in this series, feel free to comment on our /Dupe Facebook group. Join there, and we'll chat about anything you want. You can tell us which ones you like the most. You can tell us your own ideas. So if you hear the title "This Train Terminates" and you think, I've got a better idea than was pitched at the table, or if there's an idea for Bob Disposal or Arrest My Case in one of the previous episodes, tell us in the Facebook group. Tell us on our X Collective Twitter. Details will be in the description block. And tell us which one that you love most. And that might become a wild card. So we may throw one in there that gets the most votes that we didn't actually pick at the table. All right, so now it's time to throw the title "This Train Terminates" over to our dupe. Before we do that, we've had a fantastically relevant, current, non-linear film by British legend Danny Boyle that focuses on the different parts of humanity and Britishness, and looks at how we can become better people just by those short moments between moments where we're on the commute, and to see all these relationships flourish and build. And that was from Dan. We've had Becky's This Train Terminates, which has been a joyous, sort of fun, knowing, gory horror film with a throwback vibe to Possession, and with a whole host of cameos, and of course with the legendary Sean Bean, who, believe it or not, does not die at the end. So that's
the
itself
twist.
is powerful. So that was a brilliant idea from Becki, and so I there's two diametrically opposed ideas, and I love them both equally. So Ryan, give us some of the ones you thought of while we were going through the episode.
Absolutely. So I had a couple of ideas that sort of bounced around. One of them was they both sort of were a similar thing. Someone falls asleep on a train on the way out. It goes to their end station. The first idea I had thought of maybe something like a nuke where it goes off in London and they are far enough away out to not be hit by the initial blast, but then also then they have to sort of make their way to survival and that sort of thing. And the other one I had, maybe someone falls asleep, they wake up and they don't really understand where the station is, and it's like this beautiful town where sort of everything's a bit weird, sort of World's End style, that sort of thing. And I thought actually none of those things really link into the title of This Train Terminates. So the idea I've sort of gone for, I'm sticking to Becky's idea about the sort of the horror nature of it, but I want it to be more of a psychological thriller. And from that, I want the idea to basically, it touches on a couple of sensitive things. The first one would be suicide, and the second one is the trolley car dilemma. So also, this doesn't have to be set in London. It can be set, there's metros all over the world, but I do feel like it needs to be in a place where there's tunnels systems. So I know New York Metro has a lot of tunnels as well. I think so does the one in Barcelona. So it could be set wherever.
Yeah, it gives a bit more of a fresher vibe, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I also don't know if the phrase "This Train Terminates" is used in other countries. It might only be used in the UK. I'm not too sure. But
maybe this is the UK title for it. And then if it's in Barcelona or if it's in America, it's called something that fits their transit system better. You know, and it's been retitled.
Really badly.
Yeah. It's just nothing to do with it originally. It's just been titled This Train Terminates,
and I wanted to... So I want this film to look at the trolley car dilemma, and for those who don't know what it is, it's trains running on a track. There's 5 people working on it, and then the train is on track A. It's not going to stop. You have the option to switch to track B to hit one person instead of 5 or 1. So that's the choice of the greater evil. I know that the militaries use this in different ways as well. So I want to set this film in the sort of idea of phone booth was set in one location. I want it to be set in the car front with the driver. And the driver, I sort of thought maybe Guy Pearce could be a good cast for this.
That's great. That's great casting.
And so he would be, and he wakes up in this train, and you sort of have those like dark greens and the blues and everything that, and the sort of doesn't know, he is a train driver, but he's sort of woken up there, and a voice comes in. Like screens will show, and the train will start moving slowly, and the images will show CCTV of different 2 tracks with people on it. And so he has to constantly make these trolley car dilemmas, and he's wondering, why is it me? What's going on? And the voice that's speaking to him, I think I'd like it to be female. I don't really know. I want a voice that could sort of be
like a train announcer voice.
No, like it would be a woman talking to them, but it would sort of have to be able to be a bit maniacal sometimes. So I think last time we talked about Scarlett Johansson, sort of that in another previous episode. I don't think she's the right fit for this sort of role. It needs to be someone who can have a bit of gravel, a bit of sinisterism to their voice.
About Jenny Slade, she's sort of a comedian actress comedian actor with
her voice is quite pitchy.
Right. But you'd want something more bassy.
Yeah. So the idea is that...
You don't think it'd be funny to be like, at the next stop, like, kill Jeff or whatever? You don't think it's like the train announcer style would lend itself to this?
I'm sort of jumping around, but the reason why this is happening to Guy Pearce is that it would be someone jumped in front of their train when he was driving it, and they, for whatever reason, the family didn't get the insurance payout from his life insurance. So they blame the company, they blame the car driver. They don't necessarily blame the insurance or the fact that they blame the guy for committing suicide. So it's a husband or a boyfriend or whatever, and then the girlfriend or wife or whatever, it goes and gets people in Guy Pearce's life and puts them on the tracks in the trolley car. So the first one seems like it's a random group of people, and then it's like his boss and somebody else, and then it goes through all these things, and he's trying to work out. You know, he knows these trains, he knows how they work, so he's trying to figure out, I can open this exit hatch and whatever else, and I might be able to get contact. And he starts to recognise that where on the tunnels he is. So he'd be able to, right, I know that like this bit, we get close somewhere where I can get some signal on my phone or something, I might be able to contact someone, or I can use some of the computer system. And it's sort of a way of, this person's way of dealing with their grief is to sort of put him through trauma. You put me and my family through trauma because of all whatever happened. You know, this is your comeuppance because you didn't stop the train, because you didn't, pay safety attention for that. But maybe that's their way of lashing out. So I like the sort of quite dark, you use a lot of like greens and blues from the glows and the reds, and also you don't necessarily have to sort of see everyone get hit or whatever. You see the choices, and it's that choice, and maybe the last thing that you see them in their headlights, or maybe like a bit of blood splatter or something like that, but you don't have to watch every death. And he doesn't want to make any.
You just watch the toll it takes on him.
Well, every time it should see his face.
Yeah.
Like all it is, it then becomes a close up on his
Guy
face.
Pearce
and his
just giving
reaction.
us his acting. In IMAX.
And there is, I've spoken to people whose parents are train drivers, and I think I've been on trains where somebody has jumped in front of it, and the drivers have to react in certain ways. They have to stop the train, they walk out of it. There is a lot
to take
of
them home immediately. Replace them. Yeah,
exactly. And there's a lot that sort of happens when those things go wrong. And also, I think it's the underground. I think if you have 3 people jump in front of your train,
that's you done.
That's you done. That's you done. You're paid out because of the toll it could take on you as someone who.
Yeah. Now, part of me thinks there's a sadistic
the twist where he's already had 2. So now the big twist is that the third person, he's
engineering it so he can like get off of work so that he can change his life in a positive way. For him, to not have to work again. So there's just an angle in there that if you're doing another draft, someone might throw that in there and go, well, this is actually the twist I'm putting.
Or he'd already had 3, but some loophole had meant he'd been back on the train. And so the 4th person that he killed, this person's boyfriend, husband, he should never have been there.
Yeah.
So
because I do like, you've got this Saw-like sort of aspect to it, but I sort of like that it starts as a bottle episode thriller, like Phone Booth. You think it's just about a guy going through something. But I also, in what we were just saying, I like this element of maybe the PTSD. So there's a plausible deniability that everything he's going through is the PTSD of one person that jumped in front of his train. He's reliving it, or he's reliving the choices in his head, or the sort of Jacob's Ladder, the jacket type sort of, is it happening? Is it in someone's head? I think it is happening, but I like the idea that the audience could be like, I think he's just mad, and I think it's just going through, he's not working through his problems properly, or maybe he's driving on the train and he hasn't been taken off. Maybe someone has committed suicide exactly at the start of the shift of the film, and it's his dealing with it is playing out in his mind over the course of the film.
In Phone Booth, you had Colin Farrell, and then you also had
Kiefer Sutherland.
Who was mostly talking completely over through the phone. So you need that female actress to be someone who is that level of like powerhouse to be able to sort of draw everybody.
Can I throw Margot Robbie into the mix here?
Yeah,
because she's really hitting
you can
her
always
stride.
throw Margot Robbie into
like after I, Tonya, that was
absolutely
obscene work.
Do you know I was watching Birds of Prey or whatever it's been retitled to due to search engine optimization. It's whatever it's called now, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. But you sort of forget, because you think it's just Harley Quinn, but you forget how good an actress she is. And every scene of emotion or acting in that film is brilliant. And you go, this is better than anything I've seen. It's better than Christian Bale's Batman. This is something I've not seen before. And it's just, giving it that gravitas.
I think she's probably got the chops to be able to do all of that.
Yeah, and I maybe
so we want to set it in Australia then? Because Australia has a good history of, like, they did Rogue, didn't they? Like the crocodile horror. They have a good history of sort of low-budget horror They have.
Well, I
that sort
don't
of-
think this is a horror though. I think this is more a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
I think this is
Okay.
like this
Him
is
having to make these choices.
like I would love like Fincher to direct this because you have all that low lighting and the sort of.
Oh,
the-
you'd love
the
Fincher to
feeling.
direct this.
I do love.
This isn't the sort of thing Fincher would direct.
I know.
I feel like
And-
you're punching a little
And
bit.
also, but like the claustrophobia of being in trains and being underground.
Yeah.
It's that idea of like being. In fact, who did Buried? Who did the film Buried?
Oh,
with,
it's Cortez or something. It's a Spanish director.
Yeah,
right?
well then there you go. And then you said it in the Barcelona,
Cortez, I think.
in the Barcelona.
Yeah,
Metro system.
Yeah, I mean that seems plausible, and it's maybe the film he did before Buried.
Yeah.
You know, or something like that. Maybe this was like the one where he did it. You know, Piranha 2: The Spawning from James Cameron. He just did it to, you know, to get his paycheck, and then he did Buried, the film he really
Yeah.
wanted to do.
And I think you know the choices as he goes through. You know, it's going to be unfortunate that he's obviously. I don't necessarily know what the resolution is. Does he stay in the train? Does letting him leave, knowing that he's made the choice to kill X amount of people?
Is the last person he kills Margot Robbie?
Yes.
So this is her way. It's not.
Save your
It's not
life or
about him.
save hers.
It's not even about him. This is her working through her.
And she's
trauma.
the whole.
Oh
the
man,
whole
that's
time.
that's
So
the
there's- and
whole
there's- and
premise
like I
of
said,
my
there's-
idea. So let's steer away from that one.
Okay,
No,
well,
no,
I
I'm
mean,
joking,
yeah, but
carry
the screens inside, there'd be screens inside of the train where she's able to show him images of things that are outside. So like, this was my husband, this was our life, these, were this, that, and the other. And and he gets to, I guess, you open up that dialogue between the two of them, and it's like not.
We went to the Science Museum for Valentine's Day date. Spot on. But we had the self-driving car exhibition going on there. And one of the things was working out the AI about what the car should do. And it's exactly this. So they had, there's a person crossing a road and an old woman crossing a road. With the brakes fail, which one do you hit? And then it was this person's crossing the road when they shouldn't be crossing the road, but it's a young girl. And then there's a middle-aged man who's happily correctly crossing the road. Which one do you hit? And we were going through it, and we both had to stop because how do you make those decisions?
Yeah.
And it's tough, and it really is tough. And to ask a computer.
I like the way
to
you
make
said that, like you've done it. It's tough. It's tough.
It's tough, making
when
a
I
decision.
did it. No, but I'm always having the trolley card. I've had the trolley car dilemma conversation with friends a lot.
I'm about to say you've had the trolley car dilemma. Brian has not killed people.
Not knowingly, anyway.
Because I think that's also what's interesting about that kind of film being made now is it's interesting the phrase that you use there about how does a computer decide. I think actually the whole point behind this is computers don't decide anything. We decide to program computers.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there's no actual moral disconnect
Yeah.
between the programmer being told you've got to put the code in to say, for example, if the person is correctly in the road, you avoid them and hit the person incorrectly in the road. Well, that's something that the programmer's now been morally told they've got to do.
fantastic
And their
point.
code would stay in that system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And-
that person would be somehow responsible for every death as a result.
So to take that back
Yeah,
one step,
absolutely.
train drivers do actually, as we think they put their feet up and check Twitter, they actually are driving the train. They're actually moving it. So that's going back to that.
So if I may, if you pass me the screenplay, I would take everything we discussed and I would say, so he is not a train driver. Guy Pearce is the AI programmer who
absolutely.
has programmed this, and it's been running for a year on a trial period on this network.
Oh, interesting.
And somebody who's had somebody die because of this choice has put him in this position to reap the sort of, to
So it's
actually
AI
be the
train,
person
self-driving
making the
trains,
decisions now.
Yeah.
Something like that.
When it affects him. And so they've gone through the AI programming, all the questions that they've asked, and they put his family or his friends in those exact situations. So he
Because-
now has to make, and he doesn't. And every time he doesn't make one of those things or something horrible happens to him.
Yeah.
So a disfigurement or something like,
Something that links to what happened to Margot Robbie's husband.
Yes.
Because, yes, he might have been in the wrong place, but it was because of this at work. Or yes, he might have been this person because of this. He might have been in a lower income group. He might have been a man. He might have been this. He might have been that. But I loved him. He was my husband.
Yeah.
And your train, you decided to
you
kill him.
decided for
You
your train.
decided.
Yeah, to kill him. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
I like it. Good idea for this train
Thank you
terminates.
very much.
I'm a bit upset because it's very close to my idea.
But that's good.
But it is good. It is good.
I mean, we are brothers, so we share genes and ideas.
So mine spins off of that. It's very similar, but I want it to be to have horror overtones, but I'd like it to be more of almost like a character drama. So one of these horrors where you watch it and it works as a horror, but at the end of it, you've seen every character's arc. You've allied with them and you sort of see them come out the other end and see them as better people. And I can't think of any striking examples at the moment, but there are loads of horror films that do that, where the horror is like an ancillary part of their relationships.
Well, I guess in a way, Saw
1 particularly was an interesting... but
Saw 1 was an idea of, you have to sacrifice something to be able to
Yeah. And there are, believe
grow.
me, there are, from the Book of Saw, spin-offs that you could make this into.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to just make it something slightly different. So I like the idea that you open on a platform, you have, it's neon lit, dusk tones, blues and pinks. You sort of feel like it's an unusual look for a horror film. And you find out that you're sort of in some nondescript built-up area of Japan. So you're like, okay, you're on the Japan network system, where it's sort of built up and busy, but just disparate enough not to feel like you're in a city, to just feel like you can't be safe. You're in this sort of built-up area, but you're not totally safe. And I want it to look a little bit like the guy directed 5 centimeters per second. I want it to look like his films. I want it to look like an anime almost, with its colours, its use of these sort of pinks and blues, these hues. I want it to feel otherworldly. And, a little bit like an anime John Wick or something. I want it to feel sort of, I don't know, almost animated. And on this platform, there's a Japanese businessman. He's just another salaryman on his way home from working late. He's drunk. He's got a bottle of something in his hand, and he's just, he's a salaryman in Japan. Is the guy who will leave work only when the boss has left work. If he takes a sick day or a day off, it appears that he is not good at his job. This is a person whose entire life revolves around working to support his family, in a very traditional sort of way. There's a young couple, some Westerners. They may be on a holiday. You're not quite sure what they're doing. They're in love. They're nestled in each other. You can't quite see their faces, but they're so into each other right now. They've been with each other for a while. You can feel their sort of sexual energy, because of course in a horror film you have to have that sort of thing.
It's got to be sex.
There's a runaway punk kid, probably a Korean or from a Korean immigrant family, and she's right on the edge of the track. And her arms are balancing wide. She's sort of doing like an aeroplane type thing, and she keeps itching under her sleeves. She keeps going at like under her sleeves, but she's got her music on and she seems happy right at the edge. She's happy right at the edge of the train.
So we're already on edge, aren't we?
Definitely we are.
Right.
But she's almost like in this anime fashion with this sort of energy. She's almost like wistful. She's not. You think she's not going to go over.
No.
Like this person is like just fine on the edge of life. We've got a nurse, an older lady, an older Japanese lady. She's got blood on her outfit. She's so exhausted. She worked the graveyard. She can't even change her outfit. She hasn't got enough time. She's got to get home. She's got a kid at home who's asleep. She's got to get stuff ready for school. And then she's got to go back in to do another shift. She's absolutely exhausted. And then we've got, in the waiting room, we've got a construction worker. Or passing through, we've got a construction worker. He comes in through the gates. He says to the young girl, listen, you need to back off of that. This is dangerous. What are you doing near the edge? She tells him, politely to
What's
F
that
off.
in Japanese?
Do one.
Well, they're both English. No. The young lady's Korean, so she doesn't understand either. And what he does is she tells him to F off, and but he's a big guy, muscles, tattoos, but he's softly spoken. He's a nice chap, and he leaves her alone, goes into the waiting room. So they're all interacting with each other, and it's they're waiting for the last train, and there are errors on the board. They don't really know when the last train is. And they're all confused, and they talk a little bit with each other. A little bit about when's the next train coming, but all politenesses and sort of. A train whizzes by and they're sure it's the last train, and everybody sort of starts to get up, and they sort of get up and sort of look to see if other people know what's going on, and
You
they try.
hear the train like coming, can't you? And
And it's gone. The last train, and the board doesn't really. It's all weird stuff going on, and they just sort of say to each other like, just, do you know what's going on? No, I don't know what's going on. And then they sort of separate. No one's willing to sort of interact with each other. This is, by the way, a much worse idea than it requires to have this length of pitch.
It's already. we haven't even started.
But you're going to get it. You're going to get this pitch, and in a minute you're going to be like, "Why did you waste my time?"
Yeah.
So then this final train comes through, and it's the oldest train that is possible to be on this line. It definitely has to run on whatever, if it's electricity or diesel, whatever runs. But it's the oldest train that you would feasibly get into, what it does is it whizzes past. And it's a long train, and then it backs up, so just the last carriage is available. You know, and they've got to get on. And by that time, the construction worker's about to get out of the barrier, and then, okay, the train's there. Okay, well, I'll get on. So the first act is a little bit like a bottle episode of a drama. So it's a little bit like a one-room thing. So they're all in this train and slowly start to emerge their eccentricities, and slowly they start to chat or irritate each other. Or they're only locked into one carriage. The door doesn't open to the following carriage. They try it doesn't work. You know, previously, of course, it said this train terminates on the board. As soon as they got on, the train leaves. It says this train terminates on the board. You know, that's the title.
What's the sound you make?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the noise we make. This doesn't translate well to a podcast either. But that's the noise we make when a title is said in a movie. Ryan and I just go wow to each other, and then everybody around us is like, "Why are those two people making cat noises?" In
Historical listeners will know this.
Yeah, our fans. Maybe one day we'll hear it in a cinema. We'll just hear people's. Oh yeah. Okay, so the first act is, you know, this train starts to speed up. They start to freak out a little bit. They start to sort of get, you know, a little bit like Predators. I like it when Predators is a strange movie to reference, but I like these movies where, you know, 5 different people are thrust into an environment and they're different people, but you all get to know them at the same time as they get to know each other. But revealed in some manner on their digital displays is the character of the conductor. Now, the conductor, as this character, reveals himself to be a person putting them in a series of twisted scenarios. So this is why I'm saying it riffs a little bit off yours.
Fine.
Twisted scenarios as they work their way up the carriage. Now, we were talking about Snowpiercer earlier on, just as we were preparing for the podcast before we were on air. I wasn't thinking of Snowpiercer when I came up with this idea, and I think it was before Snowpiercer, the film had come out.
Before Snowpiercer
not the graphic novel, obviously. And I think it's going to be very different. Each carriage has a trial, and each carriage tests them. One of the characters, and there's another sort of character there. I was supposed to write this down, but I didn't. It says the last character on the station is X, so I haven't written this down. But so he's like a graphic novelist or a young artist, or he's like he's just a boy on his own. He's a young boy on his own. Or a young man. Maybe he wanted to do things in his life, but these things passed him by. You know, maybe he's just at that point where he's had to realise his life is not exactly the way he thought it was going to be. And we'll call him X. And so what happens is in the first carriage, of which I have absolutely no idea what happens, he dies. And he dies, and they all realise the stakes. So we could die on this train. This train terminates.
Right.
You know, there are traps in here, and the conductor... There's levels. And the conductor is putting them through these twisted things. Now, what happens is there are various puzzles like that sort of fit the characters, as there always are in these films, that sort of have some sort of resonance to who the character is. They have to get on top of the train to move one carriage forwards, and somebody's put into peril. They have to, disconnect a carriage because it's filling with, I don't know, with it's on fire or something. There's all these things that force them to have to do other things and put each other and themselves under risk of dying. But they don't die. But it's very much Saw-like, but they don't die. This isn't a gory thing. It's only X dies at the start. This is just to...
Do they take injury through?
They take injuries, and they have to sacrifice, maybe parts of themselves, maybe parts of their morals, maybe parts of, it's who they are, and they definitely change. So I think what happens is... What?
I've got the construction workers one.
Go on.
He has to build a tenuous house of cards, but the cards are all lined with razor blades. So he's a construction worker, so he knows, right, we've got a good foundation in. And also House of Cards is like a phase for
And I'll tell you...
Yeah. And then, but it's obviously cutting his hands up, which as a construction worker he uses
on a rickety train.
On a rickety train as well.
And now that's perfect, and it will 100% tie into why he's on that platform in the first place. Okay, so that's perfect.
Are you going to tell us?
It ties in with his...
This was unintentional.
Oh, of course.
This was not pre-planned.
We've not corroborated. This ties into his use of hands. It ties into his House of Cards falling. So I will explain that in a moment. And again, far too long for the quality of this idea. So they realise that they're on a loop. They realise they're actually on a track that goes round and round.
Right.
One of these horror movie revelations, like, my God, I've seen this sign 6 times, we're on a loop. So this is the thing they have to do. They have to all work together to get it, switch the track, to get them off the track. And when
the train to terminate.
Yes, exactly. And what it does is it goes, they get to the driver's cabin and it's just full of monitors. and they're like, what the hell? You know, it's just like comically full of monitors and cameras and stuff like that. And the conductor, what they find out is that when they take the train, again, there's lots of missing bits and pieces, but they take the train into this train graveyard, you know, of like old mangled trains that get chucked there that aren't used, you know. And this is where the conductor, it lives. It's the conductor's home. And what you find out is, and you find out this in a way that makes sense. I haven't figured out how you find this out. But what you find out is that the reason the conductor has brought them all here together is because they've all had a brush with death in different forms. Right. And none of them have resolved it in certain ways. So the Japanese businessman, this has been a week after his wife has committed suicide. He has been the sort of person to work so long and so late that he has no time for his family. That's his role, and he played that out. The young couple, they're dark and twisted. You find out through the thing they want people to put themselves in peril because they've only just met each other, but they've met each other in a death cult, and they've wanted to.
Wow!
And the death cult will probably all top themselves, right? But so they're like, well, we've only got a couple of days left before we drink the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. So they're like, want people to join in this horror with them.
Although technically they never actually drank any Kool-Aid.
Did they not?
No.
Was that from Kool-Aid themselves? Did
Probably.
they write in and let us know not to
It was
not to use their
From
brand
Mr.
name?
Kool-Aid.
Yeah. The runaway punk kid. You know, she's had an abusive history. She tried to top herself. She's got the she's just come out of hospital now, and she's got the bandages on her wrist. But and the nurse, you know, she's having to deal with all these things at work, brushes with death all the time. You know, she's got a kid at home, but she's seeing death all day. And the construction worker, the train just before this that nobody else saw was the train he almost killed himself on, because he's. I'm going to read it how I've written it.
Right.
He's a guilty serial paedophile or rapist. He wants to finish himself. So he acknowledges his own terrible inclinations.
Right.
But he can't bring himself.
Has he acted on these previously?
Oh, yeah.
So the House of Cards, all the cards are pictures of his victims.
That's how you would do it.
Yeah.
And as he's constructing his House of Cards, it's constantly collapsing, because by the end of this thing, his House of Cards will collapse. Mm-hmm. And his hands are the offending parts of it. So all these people, for whatever reason...
That's why at the beginning when these says to the girl...
Yeah, because he's trying to build that connection. But he knows he's got that darkness in him, but that doesn't make it okay. So, but this is not a very nice sort of drama horror film. This is like
you've really gone into depth.
It's quite sadistic, isn't it?
But yet, I still don't know what all the puzzles are, and I want to know what they are.
But then we need to build this. I mean, what puzzles could you get? And they sort of have to relate to each person. And by the end of it, I just want to say this just quickly. By the end of it, you realise two things: that the conductor himself has been doing this so long. Because when they get into the train graveyard, there's so many other trains that have just stopped there with all the people.
So he's done this over and over again.
Done this over and over again, and none of the people in there have been able to bring him to his end. And he is X, the young man from or maybe he's an older man. That makes more sense. The guy who dies at the start. So because they get to the end, it's because of the action they took to allow him to die at the start. So no one else in these scenarios they've been going through have brought him to the end he needed. Now I've been such an awful person, I deserve to die.
Well, no, maybe these are the only people that come to their own change, so they actually resolve. The other people go on about their lives, and he doesn't seem to change their lives. So he's frustrated, but now that he feels like he's passed on some change. So maybe the puzzle for the guy who's the businessman, he's tasked to do all of these like additions or whatever, he's an accountant, whatever. He's got to do all of them in a limited time, or the carriage will blow up.
Yeah.
But every time he finishes one, two more appear.
Yeah.
And actually, the key to what he needs to do is to stop, and then they all disappear.
Yeah,
so he's
okay,
got
that's
to learn,
good.
And he learns his lesson, and then do you know what I mean? So maybe the conductor.
And he has a new lease of life. He comes back out of it thinking, because you can't directly influence people to do that sort of thing, but he can now realise, well, I have a daughter at home.
I
She's
should
my
give
priority.
her that time.
Yeah.
And maybe he does. Maybe the conductor isn't dead at the beginning, so he looks like he's died.
That's very sore, though.
Yeah, but he comes back, and then he kills himself. Because he's like, now I've done what I needed to do.
Gives him the what's it called, the ticket to get out of there, and then tops himself.
maybe the way when they pull into the thingy and they get to see the conductor thingy, there's like the glass door between them, and he sort of says to them, you know, now you guys have resolved, and he like uncouples the train, and the train just rolls forwards into like a train furnace.
Yeah, or off the edge of like a track or something. Yeah.
Like, you know, the thing that changes the track, that changes the train.
A turntable.
Yeah.
A turntable. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's just like there's like nothing there, like or a train lift or whatever. And it just carriage wasn't there. And that's the result.
Could you also do something with what we were saying before? You know, so we were talking earlier about like if you're on a train and you see an incident or something you need to intervene in, everyone looks around at everyone else and hopes someone else is going to do it. Yeah. So you could also punish people early in the traps by, for example, if the cards are there with the razor blades, the construction worker doesn't come forward to do it, but now there's consequences because someone else stepped up. They've got no context
And I guess he'd have
for the card.
tougher hands, right?
Yeah.
So he's able to, like, someone would cuts their fingertip off or whatever.
Yeah.
But he realises actually he's got to step up to be part of his
This
puzzle.
is my time.
And that's partly why they succeed at the end, is it's everyone acknowledging their responsibility in how the carriage works.
Yeah, and responsibility in their role in accordance with death or with in that, whatever form that's taken in their life. Yeah, that's good.
Can one of the rooms be a karaoke room just because it's set in Japan? And they have to sing the song without any lyrics. No, there's like no lyrics here.
I feel like it needs to relate to the characters, but it's not a bad pitch, but it just needs to be associated with the correct character.
I know you've mentioned it be in anime style, but would this work as an anime?
It would.
Because you could
Work as
exaggerate some of those
like
things.
Death Note or something.
Yeah. Because it feels that's how you'd separate this from a Saw, isn't it? Is if it were a hard hitting animation.
Yeah. I feel like it was
And then
leaning
you could
towards that. I just didn't realise it until you said it. Yeah.
And as we know with anime, everything takes about 45 episodes to resolve.
Exactly.
So, you know, if you've got 6 train carriages,
or much more. You know, the train, they could be in there for a long time.
Over 300 episodes, you've got yourself like well easy.
Yeah.
You know, that's a 300 episode arc, man.
Yeah. I should have asked Mariko to tell me what This Train Terminates in Japanese was.
Very true.
But yeah, no, I like that. Okay, I like that it's got a sort of that it is actually an anime, and I think that gives it that edge, and I hope nobody's what sort of triggered or worried about talking about sort of death or suicide or anything. We don't take it lightly. I think films can examine these things and our relationship with these things as we. That's why they're in films, and I don't think we're making light of it or anything like that at all. But lots of films make and some films that are crass and are silly, sort of, or sometimes can tackle sort of quite complex themes. But yeah, I mean, perhaps if it's based on a manga initially, because and a lot of Japanese manga, they deal with, like, for example, Death Note deals with a lot of the politics of what a life is worth and what the orchestration of those sorts of things. So it could have been based on a manga that was made into an anime. Yeah, I think that's quite good. So we've heard our 3 ideas. An affecting sort of dramedy by Danny Boyle, a tongue-in-cheek throwback horror film. We've heard the Dupe's idea of a sort of a thriller, a psychological thriller on the train about choice and ownership. And we heard an idea about a conductor that has got people from different walks of life caught in their own brushes with end of life, and has put them in a place to come face to face with their different experiences and hopefully come out of it better people. So we've heard these ideas, and it's a very difficult decision to make, I feel, and I think I need to qualify it. I think I need to qualify it first and justify it. And I don't really want to give too much of the audience my inner workings, but Dan's idea is easier to make as a trailer. We get on the train, we do some about time.
Compliment.
We do some about time sort of nonsense. Shoot it with a sort of Richard Curtis lens. It's easy to make as a trailer. But I love it deeply as a film idea. But I think that to make as a trailer and also to give some variety, because I feel like, not that I think this should impact anyone, but Bob Disposal has this sort of feel to it, albeit American. I feel like I'm going to put the winner as Becky's This Train Terminates, because I think that...
Oh, what a tease! That really hurt!
Was that not obvious that I was going to do that?
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intention at all.
okay.
I
okay.
just have to justify why, because it's just a superbly idealized horror film. It is exactly the sort of film that should be made, can be made, probably will be made.
Absolutely.
And if you, the people, vote on it, it will be the trailer that we make before someone else can make it. So I'm gonna peg. Apologies for putting it that way around, Dan.
Absolutely, that was a.
I have no idea.
It really was.
Put in the comments whether you really thought that I was.
You should see how maniacally Sean is smiling and how disappointed
realise-
Dan looks right
Just,
now.
I did not realise that I was going for that. And if you at home thought I was, write in, and I will definitely change my ways for next time.
You can write into me. I'll take
Put a
this.
personal
tissues.
grievance into Dan. But for those reasons, I'm going to pick your idea, Becki. And I think that This Train Terminates, the Edgar Wright horror film,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
is the winner. So, if you think you can come up with a better idea at home, pop it on our Facebook page, mention it in our Twitter, and what we'll do is we'll bring it up in a following episode. I mean, I've heard from a few of you that the ideas you've come up with for the other podcasts that we've done, and they're fantastic ideas, and I don't want to be the one to bring it to you. So put it on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, take ownership of your idea for Bob Disposal, your idea for This Train Terminates, for Arrest My Case, your ideas for our upcoming episodes, and we'll mention them and talk about them during the episode, and sort of see how it riffs off of everyone at the table and how we feel about it. So it just leaves me to say subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, receive the episodes as soon as they drop. And if you like what we're doing, if you rate and give us an honest review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps keep the lights on.
5-star rate.
Yeah, I would accept 4 stars.
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
5
right.
star.
Okay.
Not after the level of stuff we've been pitching.
Also, 5 stars just for the hurt that I've just received right now.
I will accept 5 stars for Dan as a
Thanks.
consolation prize. But please, I mean, it helps keep the lights on if you know, and it helps with SEO. I mean, it moves us up the rankings. People can actually see us, and it spreads a little wider, and it gives more viability to us actually keeping on doing this, out of our own pockets.
It makes us feel nice.
Makes us feel nice. We love doing it, and we want to do it for you, and we're open to feedback and everything like that as well. So I just want to thank everyone around the table for their ideas and for their presence.
I've got a little just to say, if you really like the audio, because it's vastly improved, I hope, that's due to the wonderful Jimmy Drew, who supplied us with some amazing audio equipment today.
It's amazing equipment. Jimmy Drew, for all your equipment needs. Not all your equipment needs.
Yeah.
For all your audio equipment needs. Don't go knocking on his door for,
No,
digger.
the thing is, he's nice enough. He'd give it a go.
He'd give it a go. If you need a digger, Jimmy Drew might find it for you. You never know unless you
never
ask.
know.
But yeah, the equipment's fantastic. Thank you, Dan, for producing it, and thank you, Becki and Ryan, for your ideas.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for hosting.
So essentially, my second pitch is an action comedy in which Martin Freeman and Halle Berry are assassinating people on Chiltern Railways line between Birmingham and London.
Recorded in the Capo Studios 2020. What's up, danger?